Welcome back to the Nightmind office, friends. And welcome back to another favorite occasion of ours, the final video for a completed web series. Back in December of 2019, the animated and playable series CatGhost finished its run with episode 13, Acceptance, and has since taken a bow for an audience of over 140,000. The last time we analyzed this series was a little over a year ago, in June of 2019. Back then, we had gone all the way up to CatGhost 11, Confrontation. Just 2 episodes came out after that, which makes our job of catching up tonight much easier since the bulk of the work is done. If you haven't watched CatGhost yet, I do of course highly encourage that first, as I do with all projects covered on Nightmind. You'll never get the full impact from my highlights reel that you will from the legitimate project, and creators deserve your attention first. If you haven't finished or seen CatGhost, I've got a playlist link available for you in the video description. If you want to try playing the games along the way, I encourage that as well. Those are always in the video description for each episode of CatGhost. The whole series is only an hour, 34 minutes, 52 seconds if you just watch from beginning to end, so you're good to sit down for a spell. When you're done, if you've just been refreshing your memory or playing catch-up, you should be good to roll forward with me here. Otherwise, I've got the whole breakdown of everything up to episode 11 available to view, and I recommend hitting that if you really want to understand beat by beat what's going on. We're about to do a summary of our findings before continuing, so if you want the quick version, stay here. If you want the full rundown, follow the link in the video description below the playlist to that CatGhost deep dive, then return to this point. All good? Excellent. Let's try and break our previous findings down into pieces. I'll use the mini playlist describing story arcs on the CatGhost channel as a guide. Strap in, we're gonna go through as fast as we can. Part 1, Intro Saga, Episodes 1 to 3. We're introduced to Elon, Nara, and Gideon. Gideon is sleeping when Elon and Nara tell him they've discovered a place called Party Country, which is a big video game cabinet that takes Gideon inside, where he meets a red skeleton whose skin burns, a stone megalith, and a bus that encourages them to reunite. He does so and wakes up next to the birthday cake that Elon and Nara left him, then the episode ends. The game for this episode lets you play as Gideon in Party Country, where you can encounter another blue skeleton who can't breathe, a hanging chair, and talk to the stone megalith called Key. Conversations with Key describe Nara as the proselyte, the term for someone who has converted religions, Elon as the temptress, and Gideon as the judge. Episode 2, Knock, is about Elon and Nara sending Gideon to a prison where he needs to come up with the perfect knock-knock joke to escape. Writing on the wall conveyed messages saying, Megalith is key, referring to the talking stone, a bunch of years in Roman numerals, and wild parts of the world, a phrase related to the book Remembering Jamestown, and a passage discussing areas of the world where Puritans thought Satan reigned. The fear of Satan in and around Jamestown would eventually lead to trials against witches, a point in the story backed up by Nara's usage of Theban alphabet known as the Witches' Alphabet. Hidden frames in the episode include the hanging chair from Party Country, a jar of ashes, and a podium for a judge. The Knock Knock game's rewards involve an image of a burning steak and a drowned skeleton next to a chair. Taking into account new information added to Key's answers in Party Country around this time, we find that Gideon is in a dark place, Elon is in a jar, and Nara is immersed. The nature of the cast we're watching becomes apparent very quickly. Nara and Elon were executed as witches. Nara was drowned, Elon was burned, and they're represented as the 2 skeletons in Party Country. Gideon was involved in their demise and eventually ended up in a dark place, buried in a coffin probably as part of a normal life. This is supported by more info from Key, telling us Elon and Nara died in 1650, and Gideon died 22 years later. Our cast is now trapped together in a very weird purgatory without full recollection of their past life together. Episode 3, Window, involves a haunted pocket mirror scaring Elon, who suspects Nara of leaving it for her. Nara blames Gideon, who Elon frightens before going inside, where Nara has left a drawing for the 2 of them. Elon takes the cloth off a newly placed mirror and is confronted with the specter from the hand mirror, who touches her forehead and brings her into a pixelated scene of herself and Nara in their past life. The appearance of Elon here is very similar to the mirror version, so we can assume it's her own reflection trying to attack her in order to initiate a memory. We find out where this pixel scene is going through the game for this episode. Nara is crying because she has a job she feels unable to do, despite making a promise to Elon. In the end, Nara says she'll do anything for her. Another reward from this game gives us a clue what this was all about. A painting of a dog on a sacrificial altar, which, coinciding with the odd detail of a dog in the distance from Nara's drawing, suggests the argument had to do with sacrificing that dog. Part 2, Creature Saga, Episodes 4 to 7. In Episode 4, Circle, Elon and Nara perform a spell so they can keep evil spirits out of their sanctuary. The spell goes wrong when Gideon interferes because he wants to be included, and Nara becomes possessed, turning deeply blue and making her affectionate towards Gideon. A pixel scene that plays out during this episode, segments of the circle game, and a special thanks in the credits point out this woman as a new character named Beth, who loves Gideon and feels remorseful over something that left her depressed and guilty enough to throw herself off a cliff. It's the spirit of Beth that's coming through Nara, represented in the pixel scenes as the gray-haired figure. Gideon is represented by the ornately dressed figure. The indication here is a major connection between all three characters, the most obvious of which is that Beth was Gideon's wife. Episode 5, Banana, introduces a crying figure in the woods who has just arrived and feels awful about being turned into a banana. He recognizes Elon, who decides she'll take care of it. She turns him into pancakes the next morning, then goes to the attic where we find a bunch of other characters have been captured by her and put away. Throughout the game associated with this, you try to escape Elon's attic while finding jars with quotes, some of which stand out. First I lost my daughter, now my husband. All I want is my daughter back. Other quotes relate to events we've already learned about, like Nara and Elon's executions and the death of a dog. Episode 6, Hole, opens with a flashback of Elon's death by fire and a programming scene on an old monitor, executing the program Dark Cavern, the game attached to this episode. It tells the tale of a girl who loved to dig and was tricked into a cave system where she died. Then we go to the sanctuary, where Elon finds Gideon is throwing garbage into a wormhole. Nara flies inside and meets a giant head in space that spits out an egg with another Gideon attached. The Gideon clone and Gideon meet, touch hands, and the episode ends in a flash. The Dark Cavern game puts you in the role of a girl exploring in the dark who can come across 5 different objects that prompt a poem: a fetus, a tree, a shovel, a wagon, and a camp tent. It's assumed the girl you play as is the one described in the beginning poem. Attachment points for those poems come later. Episode 7, Key, shows us it's snowing in the sanctuary and everybody is having dinner, including the Gideon clone. The space egg hangs out in the background as constant earthquakes occur when the Gideons nearly touch. Concerned that things aren't quite right, Elon enters the wormhole and meets Megalith, who says the world is ending and there's nothing they can do. 3 years of a life have been given to whatever Elon, Nara, and Gideon have been involved in, and it hasn't resolved to satisfaction. The Gideons touch, the world ends, and we see Elon and Nara as themselves from their past life. The associated game isn't really a game. It's the megalith surrounded by a ton of space heads informing us Beth has arrived in our world, but she's not allowed to pass. This brings us to Part 3, Void. The first Void segment shows Beth falling off the cliff from the end of the Circle game. She describes being able to forgive you for what you said, but I can't forgive her for what she did. You were like family to me, and I can't let that go. When he realizes what he did, the doors will open and all of us will be together forever. Let us reunite. Void 2 shows us the arcade cabinet for Party Country, where Elon Skeleton hangs out with a woman in purple asking a question. How does our species advance if information disappears when we die? The woman goes on to say creatures do die, but somehow information gain lives on, and there's a fine line between magic and science. She also tells Elon, when I found you, you were starving, sick, and dying. I took you in and gave you the key, but you still turned your back on me. Elon insists that she doesn't need her, and the woman replies, is that why you ran from the wagon? This relates the poem for the wagon from the Dark Cavern game to Elon. Elon tells her, if fate is set in stone, I might as well be dead. The woman replies, and that is why you are not ready. The game from before that announced Beth's arrival then said, Malone has arrived in our world. She is allowed to pass. We can assume the woman in purple is Malone. Shortly after this, the screen changed, telling viewers they can send messages to the cast, which ended up being material for the Q&A episode, Judgment. A few good story hints come from this. Gideon was involved with the council, who were responsible for keeping the town safe from gypsies. This angers Elon, furthering the idea Gideon was somehow responsible for the executions of Elon and Nara, which is especially horrible now that we're aware of a relationship between himself, Nara, and his wife. Elon doesn't trust Malone, says that we shouldn't trust her either, and Nara and Elon apparently met at Elon's campsite, which ties in the camp poem from the Dark Cavern game. The Skinwalker makes an appearance. That old freaky thing, I know you didn't forget about that. And before the video ends and everything explodes, we see a visualizer playing that, when compiled frame by frame, shows Party Country was a real video game sold in a 99% off clearance bin, featuring Elon, Nara, and Gideon. The next episode is a pretty funny Patreon announcement that involves Gideon warming himself in the snow on a pile of burning money. Then we're back to business with the end of the series, the Portal Saga. Episode 9, Welcome Home, brings us all 3 characters in a new setting and in new forms. Gideon is a log, Nara is a jellyfish, and Elon is a bat. Malone then appears. How do we know it's Malone? Elon hates her immediately, and her purple color scheme is very obvious. She asks Elon if she's still trying to control everything around her after all the time they've been apart. Nara and Gideon come across a computer monitor showing items from Party Country that displays the conversation Elon has with Malone. The context is an argument about the nature of fate and Elon's apparent insistence that she has a hand in what actually happens, while Malone believes in the current of life's river. She informs Elon that she's created the situation they're in, and it's her responsibility to clean the mess. After the monitor explodes, a crack appears in the space egg. The game tied to this episode is very transparent. You play as Beth, sneaking into a village to steal a baby. If you succeed, you see a silhouette of her, the baby, and Gideon. Relating this to the pixel screen from Circle, we can see this baby was Nara, and a picture finally comes together with quotes from the Attic game and during the baby stealing game. Beth was Gideon's wife and couldn't conceive. She wanted to have a family with him, but due to circumstances felt like a failure. Hearing the cries of a newborn in a nearby village led her to investigate, where she stole a native child, convincing herself they could give her a better life. The baby was raised by Beth and Gideon as Nara, who eventually would meet Elon, get involved in witchcraft, and be caught by the town. The council decided what to do with the gypsies, the stake for Elon, and the dunking test for Nara. Gideon, despite being her father, couldn't do anything to prevent it besides possibly convincing the town to try the test instead of outright burning her. Nara drowned, Beth was shattered, and we see her loss and guilt in many of her quotes. When Gideon passed away years later, she had no one left and threw herself off a cliff. This entire origin story for Nara and Beth's relationship is directly tied to the fetus in Dark Cavern in that poem. Now, Episode 10, Reunion. Nara wakes up next to a bird barking like a dog, and Gideon wakes up next to a new character. It's Beth, speaking in the same audio from her pixel cutscenes. We're only able to understand her from the subtitles. Elon wakes up in the snow on a wagon with two frozen bodies inside, another reference to the wagon from the Dark Cavern game and the one spoken of by Malone. Beth says that she can provide Gideon with happiness, showing him what appears to be a totem of some kind. Back with Nara, the dog bird reveals itself to be under the influence of the Skinwalker, and thanks Nara for all the help she's given it. In return, it can help Nara be liked by them. She just has to pick up a blade and use it. We quickly come to see her reluctance, but is told she made a promise. Nara carries through with it, stabbing the bird dog. Beth witnesses what occurs while hiding behind a tree. This is tied into all the hints of a dog sacrifice from earlier, finalizing our thoughts on what it's all about. Nara was led to kill a dog as part of some ritual Elon needed. Why exactly she needed to do this is a mystery, but reward screens from the associated game reveal this is what happened. Now, for the last episode we went over, Number 11, Confrontation. A series of statements from Beth appear over a stairwell, things that she said out loud to Nara and things that she thought or felt but didn't express. The next moment gives us a family dinner scene between Nara, Beth, and Gideon, firmly locking in what we were given before about their relationships. Elon appears next, digging a hole while Malone watches, looking smug. She reminds Elon of a law understood by practitioners of magic. You cannot take without giving something in return. Elon says she'll worry about it later. A moment follows that relays a memory between Nara and Beth. Nara, suspended in the air, watched by judgmental heads, with Beth saying she didn't mean for this to happen. She wants Nara to blame Elon for everything, and Nara is furious, blaming Beth for Elon's demise. She sees nothing left for her and asks to be dropped, her final words before drowning. Back to Elon and Malone. The two go through a memory of their own, with Malone warning Elon what will happen if she leaves her. Elon carries through with it anyway, and we watch her in the game associated with this episode, leaving a wagon only to end up at the feet of Malone. Now, the final two episodes. First up is CatGhost 12, Resistance. We open on a programming screen, with the first line being a command to debug Party Country. Data review follows, revealing a version date of March 5th, 1999, so we're looking at content as old as the pixelated style suggests. An internet connection is made by the user Watcher33, followed by exploration of the Talisman Bulletin Board system, Virginia's best resource for software engineers. Now we have a year and a location. The user goes to the latest downloads, looks at recent, and sees Skinwalk as an option, a nifty little program that speeds up your software by cleaning memory in your RAM, detecting bad sectors in hard drives, and identifies memory leaks in your software. The user downloads Skinwalk, runs the executable targeted at Party Country, and...
What? Oh, no! Oh, gotta be... Oh, come on!
So what just happened? A whole lot of explanation all in one scene. Taking in mind everything we've seen before that ties the realm of CatGhost into programming and the Party Country game in the bargain bin, we can see that it was originally an executable file on this guy's computer, just like Dark Cavern. He was attempting to debug the program, but wasn't satisfied with his own attempts, so he went looking on a BBS, one of the internet's very early versions of a forum, and found a downloadable program someone else had written that could help debugging, named Skinwalk. But it was a virus, and the Skinwalker face we've been seeing from the start appears to be the image made to scare victims after the executable launches. This is it. This is the Skinwalker, which means the characters of CatGhost aren't just from Party Country. They are in Party Country, on this guy's computer. The monster we've been seeing is a virus. Floating in space, Gideon sits in a prison similar to the knock-knock joke cell we saw in episode 2. Beth appears, and Gideon only gets a few words in before she's overtaken by the Skinwalker, who makes her float away. Gideon is left alone, sad and confused, and a lot of time appears to pass as he sits in the cell, waiting for Beth to return. He eventually writes a message and sends it out into the void, marked Bethany. Next we find Nara in a crib. She floats out, exploring a bedroom, and then breaks a hole in the wall, floating out of her childhood memory and into the void in the present, where thousands of arcade cabinets fly through space.
We did it, Nara! We finally did it!
What are you talking about? What did we do?
I only tolerated you.
Oh wow, this took such a long time. But we did it. We got all of them! Every single one!
At least I had a family.
What? Aren't you excited?
I didn't really like you.
I don't know.
I never needed you.
Oh, what's your problem? Are you hen-hearting out on me now? After all we've been through!
Why would I want to be friends with a pawn?
I just don't know if this is the right way to do this.
Oh, now you're complaining? Isn't it a bit late for that? Do you really think she isn't getting what she deserves? After everything she's put us through?
At least I didn't kill a dog.
Elon, I'm so sorry. You have been a great leader and a really great friend. I love you. You saved me from a really bad situation. But I can't follow you anymore.
Seriously? Okay. Fine. Go on then. I don't need you. I got what I came here for.
Spare change, spare parts, old hands, warm heart. Spare change, spare hearts.
This is over.
Elon's capture of Beth saying she finally got all of them, and the images of creatures from Elon's attic show what she means. Everyone she remembers from their old life who knows who they were has come through the void and is now captured. Before Beth arrived, there was the banana who recognized Elon and almost tipped off Nara that something was strange, so he was killed. Then Beth came through and Elon succeeded in putting her in a cage. Nara, haunted by false statements by the Skinwalker, questions her relationship with Elon and what she's doing, causing her to think for herself and disappear. The game attached to this episode is Dance Party and simply shows Elon and Nara dancing around a campfire. Typing the phrase debugpartycountry.exe is the way to get results, allowing a player to move around and journey into space. The game area here is quite big, constantly glitching, and easy to get lost in. Any number of random items can be found in this space. Players have kept a growing list of their discoveries here, which seem to be a mix of things we already recognize and items we haven't witnessed but make sense coming from the past life of Elon and Nara. Now for CatGhost 13, Acceptance, our final episode. We experience a series of doors, green, blue, and red, marked 14, 67, and 33, and then come to Elon and Malone. Elon is trying to enjoy her victory, while Malone is here to ask if she really thinks it's worth it. She also offers to tell Elon the meaning of life, but gets cut off. Her next tactic is quite interesting. Have a listen.
Fine. Do you know why I took you home with me that night? I saw a beautiful heart that had been bruised. I thought with enough care and guidance it could be restored, but I guess I was wrong. You're nothing more than a child.
A child? I have everything under control.
You really think that you are the one in charge, sweetheart? Look around you. The continuity errors, spelling mistakes, the loose ends. Does this sound like the work of an all-knowing power?
Who cares about a higher power? I'm the higher power. When this is over, everyone will remember my name.
You poor little naive child. Do you know how many universes there are out there? And every second that goes by, hundreds of thousands of new worlds are being created. There are so many messages out there, we can't even keep up anymore. They never offer anyone else help or guidance in their own lives. And they drift helplessly through the void, just static and numbers, and a black unending sea of nothing. So, what makes you so special? The cold hard truth is no matter how hard you fight, no matter how hard you try to force the current of information, your mistakes will never be heard, and you will never be remembered.
I refuse to accept that I'm dead.
It's much worse than that. Oh, you never existed in the first place.
I just want my family back.
Oh, why do you even want to bother with that all of a sudden? You didn't seem to care before. And now when you're in need of help, you go running to Mommy and Daddy to fix it.
Shut up.
All you have ever done is run from your problems. You use everyone and everything around you to get what you want. And when you don't, you change the rules.
Shut up.
Some people call you evil. Some call you a monster. I don't think you even deserve that title. At the end of the day, you are just a selfish little brat.
I said, shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Oh yes, that's it! Get angry!
You think I care about your stupid laws? You survived long enough to know people just use you to get what they want.
And you would say that to her! She gave herself to you, and you used her and cast her aside like a tool.
Souls don't have emotions. The universe is a cold, unloving place. The sooner they learn that, the sooner they...
That's right. Step on everyone around you to get what you want. Walk all over the broken and crush the weak. And when you wage war against everyone around you and slaughter your way to the top, you can sit on your throne, justified that that is what they deserved. And when you're alone, surrounded by the bloody pools of your enemies, you can tell yourself they deserved it. Just like they said to you when you were burning.
Elon is transferred to another room where the mirror sits, her reflection staring back. She challenges it for a moment, only to find it change form.
You're a thief of innocence. You're a con artist. You're a murderer.
Who are you?
You created me. When you and that bitch fucked up the ritual.
Oh God.
You're a sinner. You're a harlot.
No.
You're a
No. 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 I can't do this anymore. I'm alone. I'm completely alone. I pushed away the only person who really cared about me. I really am a monster. I can't take back what I did. But I can change. Nara, I'm so sorry.
My goodness. It's even more beautiful than I could ever imagine. Oh? Could this be it? My favorite part of the story!
Malone watches with excitement as the megalith extracts Elon, Nara, and Gideon from the void, drawing them into itself. He then explodes, leaving behind this thing.
I'm not really feeling myself lately.
You were absolutely magnificent.
So, what happens now?
Go. Search out other children who have fallen from their path, and help them reach their full potential.
Okay.
Oh, you poor girl. What am I going to do with you? Congratulations, you just got a promotion. So, now that your journey has ended, what do you plan to do now?
Absolutely nothing.
Spare change, spare parts, old hands, warm heart. Spare change, spare hearts. Spare change, spare parts, old hands, warm heart. Spare change, spare hearts.
And that, at last, is the end. What a ride. So, what does it actually mean? Let's see if we can draw some conclusions. First, we'll hit one of the most confusing and revelatory moments, the video game scene. Let's go ahead and play that back.
You really think that you are the one in charge, sweetheart? Look around you. The continuity errors, spelling mistakes, the loose ends. Does this sound like the work of an all-knowing power?
Who cares about a higher power? I'm the higher power. When this is over, everyone will remember my name.
You poor little naive child. Do you know how many universes there are out there? And every second that goes by, hundreds of thousands of new worlds are being created. There are so many messages out there, we can't even keep up anymore. They never offer anyone else help or guidance in their own lives. And they drift helplessly through the void, just static and numbers, and a black unending sea of nothing. So, what makes you so special? The cold hard truth is no matter how hard you fight, no matter how hard you try to force the current of information, your mistakes will never be heard, and you will never be remembered.
Do you remember the scene when Nara broke through the wall in her old room and saw all the arcade cabinets? She witnessed precisely what Malone was describing. Just static and numbers in a black unending sea of nothing, and they don't mean anything major to anyone's life or even remembered. Ask yourself, what is Party Country? It's a game, right? A computer game featuring Elon, Nara, and Gideon, corrupted by its programmer when he downloaded a virus disguised as a debugging program and, when finished, tossed into a bargain bin for 99% off. In other words, a failure, a mess, and another old arcade-style game floating in the void of endless arcade-style games. What's more, Elon and Malone are aware of the universe they're in. Elon especially is aware of the plane they inhabit, and she's been fighting to have things her way in this twisted form of afterlife. But she's not as powerful as she'd like to think, which Malone points out gleefully.
You really think that you are the one in charge, sweetheart? Look around you. The continuity errors, spelling mistakes, the loose ends. Does this sound like the work of an all-knowing power?
Party Country is a mess that Malone can make fun of all too easily from a meta angle that's almost scary. Continuity errors, spelling mistakes, loose ends going nowhere. It's exactly the kind of criticism you could lob at someone's project. And if someone trying to take responsibility for that project says they've got it all under control, yet these issues exist all around them, they're not as in control as they claim, are they? But why does Elon do all of this? Has it just been about catching old souls from her past life with Nara so they don't recognize her? No, and she confesses it herself.
I refuse to accept that I'm dead.
It's much worse than that. Oh, you never existed in the first place.
Elon has spent her whole character arc with Malone doing exactly one thing, running from fate. Whatever Malone explained to her about the laws of the universe while they were alive, Elon didn't want to accept it. In a crazy arcade-style video game purgatory, Elon doesn't want to admit she's dead. With Gideon and even Nara gone and nothing left but her prisoners and Malone, Elon doesn't want to accept that she's wrong. That's her character. Fight everything, concede nothing. She's a control freak in the extreme, having her face rubbed in the evidence that she's wrong about something by the only person to ever tell her that she's wrong. The scene we transition to here is the main point of CatGhost, facing the accusation of the self. And you know what? Even though the Skinwalker appears as a corruption, that's actually not the case at all by the end. Ironically, it did precisely what it was meant to do here, just as it did for Nara. It debugged the program and brought about revelation. It might have done so in a terrifying and horribly negative way, but that's what it took. Being that cutting, that confrontational, that scary, that's what gave Nara enough doubt to finally question Elon's actions and accept that she couldn't just blindly follow her anymore, which set her free. Attacking Elon in the form of her own reflection pushed her to realize she was alone because of how she had behaved, putting her in a position to also set herself free and be drawn down by the megalith. As for Gideon, when you look at how that played out, he effectively went through precisely what Beth experienced when the Skinwalker took her away. The disappearance and impossible retrieval of someone you love, followed by a horribly long time spent mourning them and asking if it was your fault. Beth may have mourned the loss of Gideon in the end because she did love him and his death left her alone, but she never got over his failure to protect Nara, and she was partly at fault for Nara's death too. Gideon and Beth both failed her and sent their daughter to the chair. I'd say being left to ponder his sudden loneliness and how it happened in a cell for such a long time is exactly what brought about his revelation and freed Gideon. Being taken up by the megalith resulted in its explosion, which, if Malone's words are anything to go by, set Gideon, Nara, and Elon's spirits right and sent them wherever they're meant to go now. It also freed this thing, apparently called Throne in the credits, who asks what happens now. Malone informs it to go do basically the same thing it just did, but in other worlds.
Go. Search out the children who have fallen from their path, and help them reach their full potential.
Okay.
Oh, you poor girl. What am I going to do with you? Congratulations, you just got a promotion.
Wait, so what's the deal with the frog? That's weird, right? This frog was actually here earlier, during Malone's first appearance, just after the transformation into new forms by the characters. All we know for any further info is what Malone says when dealing with the frog. You poor girl. In CatGhost, we've got only one hanging thread left pertaining to a girl, the digging girl from the game Dark Cavern. There's no telling why Elon is so hostile towards her, aside from the possibility that she's just mad yet another random creature has appeared. Her full reason for being here though, and much of her backstory, that's a total mystery. There's still one facet of CatGhost yet explored, the game associated with the final video, titled Exit. It shows a programmer in a dirty basement room at the computer, the back of his head clearly the same image as the final profile picture for CatGhost. Periodically, game objects appear, and clicking on them will reduce a length of numeric code. Players collected the codes and worked to decipher the full message, which tells the story of CatGhost programmer. In 1983, he writes, "My home receives a phone call. My mother answered it, but then passed it along to me. My friend Josh wanted me to come over to his house. He exclaimed he had something amazing to show me, so I made the 3-block jog and walked into Josh's room to see a game system hooked up to the television in his room. It was an Atari 5200. He greeted me excitedly and handed me one of the joysticks. I was 10 years old at the time and the video game world was new to me, but as we played Pitfall, Space Invaders, and Dig Dug, I was captivated by the simple graphics, the bright colors, and dark atmospheres." The programmer goes on to describe how he eventually went on to get a Commodore system and learned video game coding. He also loved cartoons and storytelling, so he doodled 3 characters in his school books. As life went on, those characters remained there, and the programmer went to school over the next 10 years, making small games, learning coding languages, and getting a front-end development job for a website. Working late one night, he was approached by a coworker who was impressed by a game he was tinkering with and encouraged him to pursue publishing. He dug around in his old boxes of ideas throughout childhood and found the sketches he had made of those 3 characters. "I decided to make a learning game for kids," he wrote. "It's something I had a knack for, and learning games were kind of popular in 1997. I spent late evenings working on the game, but this relatively simple concept began getting very complicated. I realized to make this work I was going to need more time to work on it. I would have to quit my job, a huge risk. My apartment was running out and so I took the plunge. I quit my job, moved in with my grandmother in Virginia, and started working on my game, Party Country." The programmer worked 12-hour days, 7 days a week in the basement for the next 3 years, designing a learning game around the characters, and writes, "I became so excited about this project that I put 100 orders of one of the characters to be produced. From a business standpoint, that was a huge mistake, trying to sell toys for a product that hasn't found an audience yet." This explains the screenshot of the pile of Gideons from one of the later games. They were orders of the toys for Party Country. Continuing on, the programmer writes, "Finally, in early 1999, I finished the game, built out a demo, and sent it out to friends of mine. They enjoyed it and their kids loved the characters. I began looking for ways of publishing. At first, I tried making copies of the game on CD. I handed it out, but no one really wanted them. The internet was fairly new during those days and it was impossible to monetize without financial backing or payment support. I reached out to just about all the publishers available at the time and didn't hear back. Eventually, the programmer reached out to a friend's cousin who owned a computer outlet. I convinced him to allow me to sell copies of the game in his store. A few weeks later, I had checked in and only 2 copies had been sold. I felt disappointed, but I still had hopes that some sales would pick up. I returned a month later to the store to find all the copies had been moved without my consent to the bargain bin. Heartbroken, exhausted, and reaching the end of my hopes, I went to sketching up things for the characters and began to start work on a storyline, but this was a creative area I wasn't familiar with. My grandmother was experienced in Virginian folklore and thought she could help me with some ideas. She offered some old ritual books and taught me a few incantations to help me with good luck. I don't really believe any of that stuff, but anything to help, I guess. I explained my worries about charting into a new territory I knew nothing about. My grandmother just smiled, handed me a very old snow globe, and said, "Patience is key." I left it on my desk as I continued to work. A few weeks later, I noticed strange things happening. Monitors would come on at night, interactions that I don't remember programming occurred, and bugs would suddenly disappear. I finished the game and put it out once again to developers. I waited months and no reply. All my attempts to save the universe I created was completely futile. I sometimes ask myself, why do I keep shouting this message if no one can hear it? Why do I keep beating my head against a wall to make something work when no one even knows it exists? Is there any other reason for creators to create besides outside validation? Why do I even bother trying? A few years passed. I had accepted that I probably would never be anything more than a corporate developer. I became less creative and more complacent in my front-end work. Years later, I received a letter in the mail from a young man inspired by Party Country. He stated that it had inspired him to go into game development as well. The letter was not something I expected. Someone had actually listened to the story. I had actually inspired someone. I've been reflecting on this for a long time. I guess at the end of the day, sales figures, likes, subscribers, favorites, watchers, they're all just numbers. I think I got a little wrapped up in how many people I reached instead of how strong my message was. I never did reach any real monetary or social success with Party Country, but if I changed 1 or 2 lives, then maybe it was worth it. I am much older now and at peace with myself, satisfied with what I have achieved in my life. I used to worry that I would never leave behind anything of value when I leave this universe, but if Party Country is remembered by the few people who experienced it, and it inspires others to create new ideas and stories, then its existence is as real as the universe that it motivated. And not only does that entire message refute everything that Malone had told Elon, it answers a lot. It even has some tidbits that might have been overlooked. Now we understand the reason for the snow globe in Elon's hand at the end. It was a present on the desk, passed down from the grandmother, and its proximity to the computer monitor, which we've seen a fair deal, is effectively what created the snow atmosphere in CatGhost 7 Key. Did you notice Nara's odd reaction to tasting the snow? Now we realize it's because that wasn't snow. It was the compound used in snow globes to simulate snow. We can also understand the 3 years of my life comment by the megalith in the same episode. This was the voice of the programmer, reconciling his feelings with Party Country's initial failure and giving up, only to come back later with new designs. So, how did Elon, Nara, Gideon, and the other souls from the past life come to inhabit the realm of Party Country? The easy answer is, the programmer's grandmother gave him haunted items. The longer answer, I feel, is this. We don't know what Malone was teaching Elon. We don't know what Elon needed Nara to sacrifice a dog for. We don't know what kind of fate Malone kept trying to teach Elon to accept. What we do know is that Elon was a witch who feared death and was a fighter, someone who learned from Malone that information does not die with the body. Somehow, it continues on. Something continues past the point of death, which meant to Elon that souls must continue past the point of death. But can you guarantee that? Can you cheat death? How? I believe Elon was interested in finding out, and she took Nara on the journey with her. In the process, she landed everybody in the area of colonial Virginia where they lived in a purgatory state. Their souls attached to relics that would end up passed down a family line and finally land on the desk of a programmer designing a realm with potential bodies. Because the nature of his work was electric and souls are a form of energy, a meshing of realms occurred. Have you ever heard the expression, ghost in the machine? In CatGhost, it's literal, and there's more than one ghost. We don't need to look much further than the programmer's own writing to see his work was affected after taking in his grandmother's gifts. I think this is also an adequate explanation for the Skinwalker being both a virus and a spirit. It tells Elon it appeared when she and Nara ruined the ritual in the episode Circle. I think that was the gateway for the spirit, and the Skinwalk executable was the body it needed to really wreak havoc. So now, let's try putting a simple storyline together to understand all of what happened with CatGhost. Ready? The story begins with Elon, starving and on the verge of death after abandoning a wagon, most likely because the 2 people inside had frozen to death, suggested by this moment of Elon as a cat discovering 2 corpses in a frozen wagon, as well as this pixelated scene in the last episode showing Elon walking away from the wagon in the snow. After a long journey in the wilderness, she's discovered on the edge of death by Malone. Elon joined Malone's coven and learned the craft, which eventually involved something to do with fate that Elon disagreed with. This disagreement grew to a point of contention, and Elon struck out on her own once again. On her journey, Elon set up a campsite that was discovered by Nara, the adopted daughter of Beth and Gideon. Beth, a woman who could not conceive, stole Nara from her village, and life as an adopted native daughter in a religious colony in the 1600s must have been very lonely to say the least. Having an outcast friend who knew magic would have been exhilarating, so of course Nara stuck around and wanted to be taught witchcraft. Nara and Elon became quick friends, but knowledge of Elon had to remain secret. Nara didn't do such a great job of covering her tracks, since Beth followed her the night she sacrificed a dog as part of a ritual Elon needed to perform. It seems at first Beth might have contemplated keeping it a secret after confronting Nara, but it sure didn't stay that way. Elon and Nara were found out by the townspeople, who turned to their leaders, the council, of which Gideon was a member. Beth pled for them to spare Nara's life and tried convincing Nara to pin all the blame on Elon, but to no avail. Gideon managed to get Nara the chair instead of the stake, but she drowned and Elon burned. Gideon and Beth's only daughter was gone, both parents playing a part in allowing her execution. Years later, Gideon passed away and his soul joined Elon and Nara's in purgatory. Stricken with grief, guilt, and loneliness, Beth flung herself from a cliff into the sea, and would then come to join the same purgatory as her husband and all the members of the settlement who had been involved in Elon and Nara's executions. These are the people Elon kept capturing and leaving in the attic. Her ultimate goal was the collection of everyone, jailed or executed for their crimes against her and Nara. Gideon's position outside this fate is curious, but probably an instrument of whatever force at work put them together. The trio live in party country in this manner until the project is considered a failure by the programmer and effectively canned, only to be revived later. That's when Beth and Malone make it through. Beth's arrival is expected, but Malone's definitely isn't, and the girl from Dark Cavern is another wild card. Elon and Malone bicker as the new version of the game falls apart, with the Skinwalker loose doing its form of debugging. One by one, the trio of characters come to remember their past lives and face reflection on their actions and the events that occurred, leading to acceptance and reconciling with themselves. Their souls are collected by the megalith and freed, leaving Malone to push the spirit inside to carry on with more work and then send the frog, aka the digging girl from Dark Cavern, on her way to another world. And everyone ended up in this predicament because the programmer put some haunted objects next to his computer and their spirits were all attached to the objects because of something. I'm placing my bet on Elon having chased some pursuit to avoid death, and it resulted in being attached to the items from the programmer's grandmother while taking everybody involved in her demise with her. The most likely explanation comes from this moment in the final episode, in a series of shots showing Elon's upbringing under Malone, an old text describing a Glacis. A bit of research reveals that a Glacis is a demi-demon in service under Neburos. This demon will destroy the enemies of the magician upon command. He also has the ability to teleport anyone or anything from one location on the planet to another. Well, that would certainly work for seeing you survive death and land somewhere else, wouldn't it? This is most likely the explanation for how the events of CatGhost are even possible. Elon worshipped a demon who could transfer souls. The word is still out on a few things past this point. For instance, who is this girl in white and what are all these jars Elon has in this shot from the final episode? Is this how she managed to create her purgatory? It looks as if she's capturing souls in jars. Elon spoke about souls not having feelings in the same episode, and the jars remind us of the one scene in the attic game, where she kept everyone who passed through into party country. There's also the matter of the two Gideons, the floating head in space, and the space egg. I'll be quite honest, I don't have answers for these. The best I can do is guesswork, and the easiest guess I can make is that the case of two Gideons is purely a coding error by the programmer. It's the only thing that would have kept threatening the safety of the whole universe and then brought it to a terrible crash. The only other possibility is purely symbolic. The second Gideon holding an egg could have represented the eventual revival of Party Country, and the spacehead they came from was the developer, birthing a reimagining. It's possible the egg was holding the bird dog the Skinwalker would use, and the egg cracking at the end of episode 9 led to the bird dog's appearance at the start of episode 10, although it does take some seamless viewing to make that connection. If the egg was here entirely for the purpose of delivering the Skinwalker, then the scene of its appearance from the giant head was the virus injection. That doesn't explain Gideon's clone, though. I don't really know for certain, to be honest. That's another Frog Girl sort of mystery. But truthfully, it's always good to leave a little bit of mystery in the world, isn't it? We have the mystery of why Nara needed to commit a sacrifice, we have the mystery of what Malone told Elon that made her run from the Coven, we have the mystery of why Malone's Coven wore masks, we have the mystery of why Elon was digging a hole in front of Malone, and we have a major mystery surrounding what on earth this totem thing was that Beth wanted Gideon to use. Seriously, what was up with this? Point is, there's a fair amount of open questions left, but there's always some fun in that, isn't there? And that's it. CatGhost is complete. It was intriguing, hilarious, smart, captivating, clever, a perplexing mystery box all throughout, and one hell of an effort. And, at last, I've gone for the puzzle solve and delivered my final take on the story and events, from bewildering beginning to incredible end. So, how did I do?
Oh, it's a pretty good fan theory. It's cute that you came up with it on your own, but, you could have used a little bit of work.
A little bit of work, huh? Even after all that effort.
Yes, sir. I heard a lot about you. I don't like cats because of Elon.
Okay, so first of all, thank you both for joining me today. I'm sure there will be a lot of confused listeners at this exact moment, but please go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Chris Patrick. I'm the creator of the CatGhost thing that you just watched.
And I'm Alexis Ruiz, and I am the co-creator of CatGhost, the thing you just watched.
And I am Nick Nocturne, of course, coming at you all with what is probably going to be a blind side. So there's going to be a lot to talk about here, obviously. So I think the best way to go about it first is to take care of the confusion that is probably among people right now. I do not have these two here purely for an interview. I have them here because... Well, you know what? Let's hear it in your words first, guys. Why am I here?
Because you're a trickster.
You're a traitor.
You're a murderer.
Murder sinner.
So I had been working on a series for a while then, and I kind of needed a chance to step away from it, take a break. And you had reached out to me on Twitter and about something completely unrelated, and we were chatting, and I had mentioned that I was interested in working on an ARG web series, and you were like, "Oh, that's awesome! You should totally do it," and I did. So
here we are.
Yeah, and then you basically pushed me over the cliff to do something that I was actually kind of afraid of doing, which was telling a pretty big story. At the time, I was doing really dumb humor, and I wanted to do something more, and you kind of pushed me along.
Like a demonic mama bird out of the nest.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think I've explained it to you guys this way before, the way I see it, but I'll give it to the audience, and I'll let you guys judge how accurate this is. It's been asked before, like since I started Night Mind, Nick, when are you going to make a web series? When are you going to make an ARG? And I've always told you guys, and you guys have agreed on these terms, that you like these terms. If and when I do, if it ever gets to the point where I want to give it coverage on Night Mind, long after it's done, then I will reveal it. That moment is not this moment, because I did not create CatGhost. However, these two did. Chris and Lex are like the parents of CatGhost. It is their child, it is their baby. They got pregnant with it, they carried it, they made it, they raised it. I'm the godfather. It's my godchild. So I'm the one who gets 911 calls in the middle of the night asking why it won't stop crying and how to set
Please,
up a
we've shaken it and it won't stop.
That's why you're having a problem. So I have about some of a hand in CatGhost, and I have since its germination. Chris and I did meet, reaching out through Twitter once for something that I'll actually bring up in a couple of weeks. It's a little thing. But shortly after that, we began talking about a different kind of project, not related to web series or ARGs. And then from there, we started talking more about my realm of things, because Chris was very interested in making a web series or ARG. And he had the tools to do so in a way that I had not seen before, which would be an animated aspect. Like a purely animated kind of web series in the field of stuff I cover and that we're into here on Night Mind and in the wider array of the field, that would have been awesome. I knew of nothing like that had been done successfully. So he told me a concept, which was a very simple concept. He had these 3 characters, 2 of them were witches, and they were tormenting the guy who helped kill them. That's all it was at first, and I thought, that's wacky, and I don't know how you can make it be that way, but you know what? Give it a shot. You've got nothing to lose. So Chris started developing the concept and putting together an episode of CatGhost. He brings it to me. And I am head over heels with it. Like, when I say he knocked it out of the park, he knocked it out of the park. There were a few things that I needed to criticize, and we'll get into that later, of just all the little nitpicks and our actual workflow, which really ended after, like, the first few episodes, to be honest. The involvement that I had going forward past the very beginning phase was super, super minimal. And that's exactly how we wanted it and how I wanted it. But it was very much an advisory role. And for those first few episodes, I told him, you've got something brilliant here, and I need you to go forward with it, because this is going to be something. And it's not going to take me saying something or pushing it on social media or whatever in order to get traction. And sure enough, Chris, what happened?
It did okay.
It did okay, he says.
I was waiting for it. I was waiting for it.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't even remember the critiques you gave me. I do remember I had some decisions in the first couple episodes that you were like, you need to stop this right now. This is not going to work. You were not happy. But after that, I kind of vanished for a long time and just kept going. And there was a point, is during Warmth, we weren't sure if we were going to be able to finish it, because we had so much going on and we were struggling with money. And so we started, threw up a Patreon, and everyone was so great and supported us. And then we finished it, and it finished way bigger than I thought it would. And I feel really happy with how it ended and how it came out.
Yeah, just watching that actually teared up, remembering all the stuff we had to do in order to make the series finish. Actually finish. It still makes me cry every time.
Yeah, there's a lot of personal stuff in there that I'm not gonna get too emotional, but
do not ramble.
Sorry. I hope you're gonna edit this, because I can talk for hours. It was a personal story for me, and it made me very happy to have finished it, and very relieving.
Yay!
Yeah, and I can pick that up on the end, because I have been on this journey with you. When I can attest to with CatGhost, and as far as my involvement goes, what actually went into the story and its direction and creation and knowing the secrets in the actual story, it's about maybe 10% for me. 90% to 85%, I've been blind to, which is exactly how we want it. What I've known more about is your journey making CatGhost and all the trials and tribulations that came along with it.
Yeah.
Now, in the beginning, because I actually was charting your progress, when Chris and I began talking about this concept, I told him, go for it, see if it's good. Just because you make it doesn't mean that I'm going to support it. I'll tell you exactly what I think about it. And you know what? It's funny how this one works, because he's the kind of person who, when it comes to criticism, if what you genuinely feel comes to your mind first in the form of a direct insult, that's what he wants you to say to him. He does not like, just lightly stepping around and giving more formal criticism. He appreciates that, but he would like the arrow straight to the chest if that's what you've got to give him. And I gave him a couple of those at the beginning, but still completely believed in the project. And I told him, you've got to push it out there. I know it's brilliant. And the stuff that he kept making for the first few episodes was brilliant. But I told him, I've got standards here. You've impressed me here, but I want you to impress everybody else first. Let's see you make it on your own merit. And you did. I tracked the progress at the beginning, and just to remind you of where you came from and why this was such a big deal. You released the first episode of CatGhost on June 15, 2017. No promotion, nothing behind it, but just pushing it out into the sea. By June 24th, you already had over 1,000 views on CatGhost 1 birthday. And I was flipping out over that. I couldn't believe it. July 5th.
I remember.
Yeah, July 5th. You reached 2,300 views and 240 subscribers. And I remember telling you, nobody makes numbers this good this early. It doesn't happen in this field. Do you remember that day?
I do.
Yes.
And so, CatGhost 3, right? That came out August 14, 2017. My night vision video came out on October 1st of that year. So, a little while after August, CatGhost 3 comes out. By the time I made the video, you had already pulled in 1,325 subscribers. CatGhost 1 Birthday had over 6,000 views, and the other 2 videos had over 3,000 views each. For Night Vision standards, as a web series first coming in, you had exceeded all expectations with this project.
Well, Nick, it's not about the numbers, it's about the spiral.
Exactly. And you were cutting out a little bit there. Yeah, and that does tie into the message at the end, but that's exactly right. But I did just want to illustrate that by the time it came when I covered this on Night Vision, you had completely exceeded all expectations. It's like, no matter what, if I had known you or not, you were getting in here and I was gonna flip my lid over this thing.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely a lot of work to make and keep steady, like, at all.
Yeah, that was the most intense thing I've ever undertaken in my life. So much planning and so much thought and so much
lots of work.
Oh my gosh, coming up with dates and numbers and rules and stuff for the universe, and then
researching,
and then checking our own books to make sure we were doing the right thing. Is, oh my gosh, it was so crazy. I'm exhausted.
I remember a lot of points of you would come to me and ask about a specific thing or tell me about something that happened, and nobody has managed to cause you to think about what you were doing as much as the CatGhost private community that cropped up as soon as you started going.
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
They were awesome. I've never seen a group of people so dedicated and so vicious for the facts. Funny story. After the show ended, I revealed myself in the CatGhost server and was like, "Hey guys, I'm the creator." And I told the owner of the server that I had already been there for the entire time, and that I was giving you hints as a rando. And she looked back on it, and it was funny because the response was, I would say, "Hey, have you ever thought of this?" And their response was, "Don't come up with the crackpot theories in the server, please."
Just slam you down. I mean, I love those guys. They are so cool and super creative. So much came out of there that I didn't expect. When I started seeing CatGhost fan art pop up, I cried. I literally did, because I was just like, people are actually drawing the characters. They're drawing our characters. They like our characters enough that they want to learn to draw it. And they were making a wiki and a Reddit, and there's just communities I didn't even know existed were just popping up in random places.
There's people out there who have jobs doing what they do, and the fact that they just took it on themselves to do it is just unbelievable. I cannot believe they did that.
There were people tearing apart the games. There were people doing cosplays. There were people that were managing the wiki, managing the Reddit. Even now there are 3 separate Discord servers just for CatGhost. One for English and 2 for Brazilian. And it's insane how gigantic both those communities are.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned ripping open the games, because a lot of the communication that we had going forward, where we didn't talk about the story, because it was mum's the word, the less I knew, the better. But that didn't stop us from talking about what was actually happening with production and the community. And consistently, the ongoing problem is, how do you keep the CatGhost community from tearing open the games and eating all the secrets without playing them?
Yeah.
Sleepless nights every time. I was like, they did it again. They broke it again.
Yeah.
And this time quicker.
I came up with my own encryption system to try and stop them, and they broke it.
What was it?
I called it Nebula. But they broke it. They broke it in less than 24 hours.
It was disheartening and also impressive. I was just like, man.
They were so nervous because they were like, I hope the creator doesn't hate us for doing this.
Meanwhile, we're screaming in the living room, I don't know what to do. They keep finding entrances.
To be frank, though, you hit a lot of things extremely well, even in the videos. Because going forward, past CatGhost 3, CatGhost 4, I was really blind. And even in the night vision episode, and this was a funny thing, I remember when I was done with it and you were watching it, and I sat there and said, so, Skinwalker, that was out of frigging nowhere. Where the hell did you come up with that? Because you hid this giant Skinwalker screen in there, and as soon as I started finding it, I'm like, what? No, did he actually? There's no way that he, and I'm just sitting there putting this together in Photoshop thinking, damn it, Chris, you've got me chasing a wild goose here trying to see if there's an image you made, and just compiling this in Photoshop, and sure enough, it's like, yup, he's already started hiding things, and I had no idea about it that you actually have to really dig and look for, and I'm like, I'm so proud of him. And you did that all the way along, because for this video, I really did have to look at the entire breadth of what you did for CatGhost, from the episodes to the games, even the Tony Cry Night live stream, everything, and really put it together and think, okay, what is the story here to the deepest depth that I can tell it with the evidence I've been given? And that's what we pretty much shook hands on from the beginning. This moment right here with all of us and all of you listening and watching, this was going to happen, where it's like, I've given the little bits of advice and knowledge where I can, but there's going to come a day where I take this whole thing and I'm going to go for the solve, and I'm either going to get it or I'm going to fall on my face in front of two friends who trusted me to get it.
So do you want a real answer of how you did?
I hate to be a tease. Actually, no, I love to be a tease. But this video was getting very long now, and we ended up speaking for another half hour. So I decided to put the rest of our sit down into a video all on its own, which is available for you in the video description. If you're interested in finding out how I did, hearing about the working processes behind CatGhost, trivia in the series, the worst element of the whole series that is entirely my fault, and what Chris and Lex had to say to aspiring web series and ARG creators, give it a listen. Before you head off though, here's one important piece towards the end that you ought to know about if you've been curious about their next project, especially if you'd like to get your hands on it right now.
So I finished a game, Puzzle Party. I threw it up on Steam, and it's pretty good.
It's like $5. It was for fun to kind of like cleanse the palate after. Jeez,
Yeah.
How long was CatGhost? Like what, 2-3 years?
3 years.
Yeah.
Oh, 3 years. Good God.
After you do something that intense, you need to like take a little bit of a breather.
Oh God, that's 3 years of lip syncing. No wonder I was getting angry towards the end.
Yeah.
Good God.
But yeah, it's good. It's a story I wanted to tell, and I told it, and I feel happy about it.
Yeah, so it's a cute little puzzle game that has a story that, you know, every time you beat it, it gives you more story. There's lots of little modes. It's, you know, it's cute.
If you like puzzle games and you like story, you'll love this game.
Yeah.
And now, Puzzle Party, I can definitely vouch, it is fun. I got to play test that. I was one of the lab rats for it, getting to play test that and, you know, just give some feedback on that. And man, you really did make something where even if you're not like a puzzle game person, you find that element of, I'm not gonna let this beat me. You just keep throwing yourself at this level over and over again. And it's a puzzle game unlike any other. It's exactly the kind of puzzle game that you would and would not expect from the creators of CatGhost. If you liked CatGhost, there's definitely an element of ARG and find out what's actually happening present in Puzzle Party. And progressing definitely gives you a lot of reward. So if you ever wished while going through CatGhost that it was a full-fledged game that you opened in the video description, now you've got it, and it's available on Steam. And I am proud to say, I'm very thankful as well to say that I made a couple of levels and they got in.
You did, and people hate it. How dare?
Do they?
There's some of them that suffer.
It's funny because they're like, that's a Nick level.
Yeah, that's Nick level. That's a Nick. Oh, that's definitely a Nick level. Like, a lot of the time I'll look at a level and I'll be like, Nick knows he's making puzzles for humans, right? Like people, actual people.
They're beatable. It's been done.
They are beatable.
Yeah.
Yes, by interdimensional wormhole demons, maybe.
Well, some humans have been in it, so I consider it possible. I'll go ahead and put the link in the video description to Puzzle Party. I highly encourage everybody, go ahead, grab that, give it a try. Give them feedback on the studio Twitter. It's Crispy Animation, right?
Yeah, Crispy Animation. And
With a K.
Yeah, with a K. And it should be a little toast glitchy icon that's like the first thing that should show up, hopefully.
And it's true. Just go to the video description below and you can find the link to Puzzle Party. Give it a shot and let Chris and Lex know what you think. And if you do manage to beat it, of course. Aside from the rest of our sit-down, that's all for tonight, everyone. Thanks to Chris and Lex for everything, really. Trusting me from the start to talk about their idea, thinking enough of me to come to me for feedback, letting me into the world they were building, joining me tonight for this big surprise and discussion, and, of course, being best friends. I'm proud of you both, and I want you to always know that. Thanks to everybody who supported them on Patreon, and those who supported CatGhost in general. And thanks to everyone who has supported my Patreon and Nightmind. If you've ever got a spare couple of dollars lying around or just feeling generous, you can support the channel to keep me running, and you'll get your name in the credits of each major video while gaining access to the Nightmind Patreon community. I've also still got a backlog of exclusive videos hanging out there, so you can get some content you haven't seen. Stick around to see the names of all the creatures of the night who made this video possible. Thanks to all of you for joining me in the dark again this evening. Once more, I'm Nick Nocturne, and I don't know when we'll be seeing Frog Girl again, but you can count on seeing me again real soon. Until next time, sleep tight.